Marlon Brando's widow finally reveals the truth about Anna Magnani after staying silent for years, and for decades that silence spoke louder than any interview ever could. Two towering figures crossed paths only once, yet the weight of that meeting followed Brando long after the cameras stopped. She lived with no emotional armor, offering truth even when it cost her everything, while he survived by holding parts of himself back, loved by millions but guarded at home. What she revealed was not what anyone expected. There was no confession, no secret romance, no dramatic betrayal pulled from the shadows. Instead, the truth surfaced through years of marriage, through patterns that never changed, through one name that carried a different gravity than all the others Brando left behind. The truth was far more unsettling than anyone imagined. It was about what Anna Magnani represented, something Brando admired, feared, and never fully escaped. And only after everything else was gone did that truth finally come into focus. Long before Anna Magnani entered his life, Marlon Brando had already rewritten the rules of American acting. Born in the American Midwest, he grew up restless, resistant to authority, and deeply observant of human behavior. Those early years shaped a man who learned how to watch without revealing himself, a skill that would later define both his artistry and his private life. Brando arrived in New York, driven more by instinct than ambition. At the actor's studio, he absorbed method acting not as a performance trick, but as a way to strip away artifice. When he stepped onto the Broadway stage in A Streetcar Named Desire, audiences saw something unfamiliar. His vulnerability felt unguarded, his masculinity unpolished, his emotions unpredictable. Hollywood took notice quickly. Film roles followed, and with them came acclaim that few actors of his generation ever matched. By the early 1950s, Brando was no longer just a star, he was a symbol. His performances in films like On the Waterfront presented sensitivity as strength and silence as power. He gave the impression of emotional availability, yet those closest to him observed a man who controlled access carefully. What audiences experienced as raw exposure was, in reality, tightly managed. Fame rewarded that balance. Brando learned that he could reveal emotion on screen, while withholding it elsewhere. Interviews showed flashes of honesty, often laced with criticism of Hollywood and discomfort with celebrity itself. He spoke openly about dissatisfaction with the industry, about roles that felt hollow, about success that arrived without fulfillment. What he did not offer easily was intimacy without distance. As his career advanced, Brando became known as brilliant and difficult, praised for his talent and criticized for his resistance to studio expectations. He challenged directors, questioned scripts, and pushed against the machinery that elevated him. Control, both artistic and personal, became essential. Without it, the world felt intrusive. His personal life mirrored that pattern. Relationships formed, faded, and reformed, often marked by intensity, followed by withdrawal. Marriage entered and exited his life more than once. Those who knew him described a man capable of warmth and generosity, yet fiercely protective of his inner space. He valued connection, but only on terms he could regulate. By the end of the 1950s, Brando stood at a crossroads. He was widely admired, financially successful, and increasingly disenchanted. Hollywood still wanted him, but he no longer trusted what it demanded in return. His performances remained powerful, yet the cost of constant exposure weighed heavily. It was at this point that The Fugitive Kind entered his life. Adapted from Tennessee Williams' Orpheus Descending, the film promised artistic seriousness and emotional depth. Directed by Sidney Lumet, it offered Brando another opportunity to inhabit a troubled soul, a role that aligned with his strengths. On paper, it looked like a natural fit. What Brando could not anticipate was that this project would place him opposite someone whose relationship to emotion differed entirely from his own. Until then, he had navigated fame, relationships, and performance by deciding when to open and when to retreat. That strategy had served him well. It protected him from being fully known, even as millions believed they understood him. Before the cameras rolled, Brando's life was already defined by that careful balance. Emotional truth was something he delivered brilliantly on screen, then contained once the scene ended. Control had become both his shield and his signature. That way of living had carried him to the height of his career. Soon, that balance would be tested by a presence that did not believe in retreat at all. Long before her name appeared beside Marlon Brando's, Anna Magnani had already built a career rooted in survival rather than ambition. Born in Rome and shaped by instability from an early age, she grew up in a world where certainty was rare and emotional honesty became a necessity. Those early experiences formed a woman who did not learn how to protect herself by hiding, but by standing fully present in whatever life demanded. Italian cinema did not discover Magnani because she fit an ideal. It embraced her because she refused one. Her face carried history rather than polish, and her performances reflected lived experience rather than illusion. In post-war Italy, audiences recognized themselves in her, their exhaustion, resilience, and hope mirrored back without sentimentality. She did not soften pain for comfort. She gave it shape and allowed it to exist. Magnani's rise was inseparable from the neo-realist movement that reshaped European film. Working with directors like Roberto Rossellini, she became known for performances that felt unfiltered and immediate. Emotion for her was not something summoned on cue. It was carried into every moment of work. The boundary between life and performance barely existed. Not because she lacked technique, but because she rejected separation. International recognition arrived without changing her approach. When she won the Academy Award for The Rose Tattoo, she became the first Italian actress to receive that honor. Hollywood took notice, yet Magnani remained wary of environments that demanded compromise. She understood how easily authenticity could be misunderstood as difficulty, especially when it refused to accommodate comfort. Her reputation followed her across borders. She was admired, respected, and sometimes feared. Directors knew she brought everything with her: the pain, the strength, and the unpredictability that came with living honestly. She did not manage her emotions for others. She trusted them. That trust carried risk, but it also carried truth. Magnani's personal life reflected similar patterns. Relationships were intense, often marked by devotion and disappointment. She loved deeply and suffered openly, never masking feeling to preserve appearance. Loss did not harden her. It clarified her. Each experience added weight to the performances that followed, enriching them with a depth that could not be manufactured. By the time Hollywood sought to place her opposite Brando, Magnani was already fully formed. She did not arrive hoping to adapt or transform. She arrived as herself. American studios viewed her as powerful and unpredictable, an actress whose presence could not be neatly contained. For Magnani, that was not a flaw. It was the only way she knew how to exist. Emotionally fearless, she carried her truth into every space she entered. Performance was not an escape from life, but an extension of it. That approach earned her admiration and misunderstanding in equal measure. She accepted both. Before stepping onto the set of The Fugitive Kind, Magnani had already lived through acclaim, heartbreak, and survival. She had nothing left to prove and nothing she intended to soften. Her work had always asked one thing in return: honesty. That expectation would soon meet a very different philosophy. What awaited her was not conflict born of rivalry, but a collision of truths, one built on exposure, the other on control. Neither was willing to retreat. When production began on The Fugitive Kind, the pairing of Marlon Brando and Anna Magnani appeared, at least on paper, to be a meeting of equals. The film, released in 1960, was adapted from Tennessee Williams' play Orpheus Descending and directed by Sidney Lumet, a filmmaker known for discipline and emotional rigor. The material demanded intensity, restraint, and vulnerability in equal measure. It was the kind of project that promised seriousness rather than spectacle. Casting Brando and Magnani together carried symbolic weight. Both were known for realism, both rejected superficial performance, and both carried reputations shaped by uncompromising standards. Yet their similarities ended there. From the first days on set, their differences defined the working environment. Magnani approached the role as an extension of life. She did not prepare emotion and then set it aside. She arrived with it intact. Her presence filled the space between takes, scenes, and conversations, not through volume, but through refusal to disengage. Performance did not end when the camera stopped. For her, it simply continued in another form. Brando's approach followed a different logic. Method acting allowed him to access emotional depth with precision, then withdraw once the moment passed. That boundary was essential. It preserved focus and control. On many sets, it went unnoticed. On this one, it became visible. Observers and later film historians described an atmosphere shaped by restraint and resistance. Magnani did not modify her process for anyone, not for the director, not for the studio, and not for her co-star. She expected honesty in response to honesty. Brando, unaccustomed to being pressed beyond the frame, resisted that expectation. The tension that followed was professional and psychological, rooted in two artists unwilling to bend their way of working. Sidney Lumet maintained order and structure, keeping the production grounded in discipline. There were no reports of chaos or misconduct. The discomfort was quieter than that. It lived in the space between approaches, in the inability to meet without compromise. Neither actor was wrong. Neither surrendered ground. That friction translated into the performances themselves. On screen, their scenes carried a charged intensity that felt unresolved, layered with longing and frustration. Critics later noted the weight of those interactions, even as the film struggled to achieve the success many expected. Despite its pedigree and cast, The Fugitive Kind received mixed reviews and failed to resonate widely with audiences at the time. The film's reception did not erase what occurred during its making. For Magnani, the experience reaffirmed her refusal to dilute emotional truth. She completed the work and returned to Europe, where her career continued along the path she had chosen long before Hollywood took notice. Brando moved on as well, into other roles, other collaborations, and other phases of his life. They never worked together again. There were no public reflections, no shared retrospectives, no effort to reframe the experience. The moment ended when filming ended, at least on the surface. What remained was not conflict, but recognition. On that set, two philosophies met without resolution. One believed emotion must be lived fully, without retreat. The other believed emotion could be accessed, shaped, and contained. Neither approach defeated the other. They simply coexisted briefly, then separated. For Brando, the encounter disrupted a balance he had maintained for years. Control had always allowed him to move forward without carrying too much behind him. This time, something resisted release. Magnani's presence, uncompromising and intact, left no softened version to remember. For Magnani, the experience confirmed what she already knew. Truth could not be negotiated. It could only be lived. When The Fugitive Kind concluded, the collaboration ended without resolution or reconciliation. The work was finished. The collision was not. That brief meeting, contained within a single film, would leave an imprint that time did not erase. After the cameras stopped and the years moved on, Marlon Brando's life settled into quieter patterns. Fame remained, though it no longer dazzled him in the same way. Films came and went, public battles faded, and marriage brought a different kind of closeness, one built not on performance, but on daily presence. Living beside him meant seeing what survived when the spotlight was gone. Brando was not a man who avoided reflection. He spoke openly about disappointment, about Hollywood's failures, and about the cost of being admired without being understood. He revisited many chapters of his past with surprising candor, offering stories, judgments, and admissions that stripped away his own legend. Friends, collaborators, rivals, and former loves surfaced naturally in conversation. Memory for him was not forbidden territory. Yet one name remained absent. Over time, that absence became familiar. Not dramatic, not deliberate, simply consistent. Certain experiences were revisited and reshaped through retelling. Others remained exactly where they had been left. Anna Magnani belonged to the latter. Her name did not surface casually, nor was it corrected or dismissed. It stayed outside the narrative Brando chose to share. What followed him into marriage was not a story, but a pattern. Living with Brando meant understanding how he organized memory. Some parts of his life were revisited until their edges softened. Others were preserved untouched. This distinction revealed more than explanation ever could. Silence, when repeated without exception, forms its own shape. The truth that emerged was not built on secrecy. There was no hidden relationship, no betrayal, no private confession waiting to be uncovered. Instead, there was recognition. Magnani represented something Brando had encountered briefly and never resolved. She embodied a form of emotional honesty he recognized clearly, even if he did not adopt it as his own. Marriage did not erase that recognition. Shared years brought familiarity, routine, and trust, but they did not rearrange the inner landscape he carried. Some memories remained intact because they were never reduced. To explain them would have meant changing them. What his wife came to understand was not the content of the memory, but its position. Magnani occupied a fixed place, neither elevated nor diminished by time. She was not spoken of because she did not belong to the category of experiences Brando reshaped through words. Her presence remained as it had been, unresolved and undiluted. This understanding did not arrive suddenly. It formed gradually, through years of noticing what returned and what did not. Patterns repeated without announcement. In those repetitions, meaning took shape. The truth lived there, not in revelation but in consistency. Magnani's impact followed Brando not as regret, but as awareness. She had shown him a way of being he understood and respected, yet chose not to live by. That encounter clarified something about himself, a boundary he would not cross. It stayed with him because it remained honest. The truth about Anna Magnani was never spoken aloud because it did not require defense or explanation. It existed in the shape of silence, preserved by restraint. Over time, that silence revealed itself not as absence but as weight. In the end, what followed Marlon Brando into marriage was not a secret but an understanding. Anna Magnani remained part of his life not through words but through what was left untouched. And in that quiet continuity, the truth finally came into focus. Long after the film reels stopped turning and the people at the center of the story were gone, the encounter between Marlon Brando and Anna Magnani continued to hold meaning. Not because of what happened on set, and not because of anything left unsaid in interviews, but because of what their brief collision revealed about legacy, truth, and how history chooses what to remember. Anna Magnani's career has often been reduced to intensity. She was labeled difficult, demanding, and overwhelming, descriptions frequently applied to women who refused to soften themselves for comfort. What those labels missed was her discipline and clarity. Magnani did not perform chaos. She committed to honesty. Her work asked audiences to meet her where she stood, without illusion or escape. That demand unsettled some, yet it also gave her performances a lasting power that has never faded. Marlon Brando's legacy followed a different arc. He is remembered as a revolutionary actor, a man who changed how vulnerability appeared on screen. Yet his personal life tells a quieter story about distance and self-protection. His silence around Magnani fits within that pattern, not as omission but as acknowledgement. Some experiences remain meaningful because they are not reworked into narrative. This story endures because it resists simplification. There is no romance to celebrate, no rivalry to dramatize, and no confession to uncover. Instead, there is recognition. Two artists met, saw something true in each other, and continued on separate paths. That kind of encounter does not demand resolution to remain significant. The cultural moment in which Magnani worked was not prepared to honor emotional fearlessness without condition. Her refusal to retreat was mistaken for excess. Only later did critics begin to reassess her contributions with the respect they deserved. Her influence can be traced through generations of performers who embraced realism without apology. Brando's silence, when viewed through that lens, takes on a different meaning. It becomes less about avoidance and more about respect. To speak of Magnani might have required reducing her impact to language, something she herself resisted. By leaving her outside the narrative, he preserved the truth of the encounter as it was. Stories endure when they reveal something universal. This one speaks to the moments in life that shape us without staying. Not every meaningful encounter leads to lasting connection. Some arrive briefly, clarify something essential, and then leave us changed without explanation. For those who lived alongside Brando, the truth emerged quietly. It lived in patterns, in what was never revisited, and in what remained untouched by time. For those who study Magnani, the truth lives in her work, still alive with urgency and presence. The meeting of Brando and Magnani lasted only as long as a single film. Its meaning stretched far beyond that. It endured because it revealed a boundary, a recognition, and a choice. In the end, this story remains not because it offers answers, but because it honors restraint. It reminds us that some truths do not need to be spoken to be real. They survive in silence, in memory, and in the way certain names continue to carry weight long after everything else has faded. For more emotional stories, check out this video.